Intermittent fasting will stimulate autophagy. In other words, they can have their protein and eat it too, to coin a phrase, because even though they're getting a fairly high amount of protein, which will stimulate, the leucine and the amino acid will stimulate the mTOR. By going on intermittent fasting, they'll get enough autophagy to offset the mTOR effect. And
hello and welcome. I am Coach Castle, a certified biomechanics expert, nutritionist, and efficiency coach. Subscribe to this channel to learn the most efficient ways to maximize your muscle growth and recovery, enhance your body, and advance your mind, all using the latest science. Welcome to Castle's Corner.
So if I may, just real quick here, would it make sense to have something like a Mediterranean diet with about a gram and a half protein per pound, and have intermediate fasting of something like 10 or 12 hours? Would that be a healthy way for for an older person?
That would be the way to go. Intermittent fasting will stimulate autophagy. In other words, they can have their protein and eat it too, to coin a phrase, because even though they're getting a fairly high amount of protein, which will stimulate, the leucine and the amino acid will stimulate the mTOR. By going on intermittent fasting, they'll get enough autophagy to offset the mTOR effect, and the net effect will be no negative effects on health. I strongly recommend intermittent fasting for anyone who can handle it, but older people it's especially useful. And if they can handle even longer fast, I mean, the average one is like, to say 16 hours or something like that.
Between 12 and 16, I believe is average.
Yeah, 12 and 16, but the longer you do the fast, the greater the degree of autophagy. At let's say an 8-hour fast, you're getting very little autophagy, almost nothing. It starts about 12, 16 hours, and if you go a day or more, by 2 days, if you go 2 days without eating food, which is, I admit, is very hard. I mean, I couldn't do it, but if you could do that, you're having a maximal autophagy effect, and after 48 hours, you're actually getting a huge release of growth hormone. The growth hormone is going to help. That's where the body fat loss will kick in, because contrary to popular belief, intermittent fasting isn't really that effective of fat loss technique. It doesn't, because remember, you're doing intermittent fasting, but then you're going to go back to eating. If you go back to eating and you're eating enough calories to maintain your weight, you're not going to lose any weight, no matter, even if you do intermittent fasting every day. In other words, the key to intermittent fasting is the autophagy effect and the growth hormone effect. But growth hormone, again, only kicks in on a very extended fast. The short-term fast, you don't get any growth hormone.
But with just for a daily basis, it would make sense to do go to bed, don't eat 2 hours before bed, don't eat 2-3 hours when you wake up. Then you'll have a protein shake with some kind of fat, take your pills. But then the issue is just getting enough protein throughout the day in that time frame, to meet all your nutrient requirements in that time frame. But it seems like it'd be effective to do it like that for a long period of time. You wouldn't have to do a 2-day fast or anything. You could just stick with that.
Well, there's another way around it. It's called time-restricted feeding. Yeah. What they found is that by they found this originally with rodents. They found that they had two groups of rodents. The one group of rodent, they had them eat. See, rodents tend to be nocturnal. They do most of their eating at night. What they did is they unnaturally fed them at night. And another group, they fed them during the day only within certain hours. In other words, let's say between 7 and 6 p.m., 7 in the morning, 6 p.m., right? Both rodents ate the same amount of food, but the rodents that ate at night, the same exact amount of food, all got fat. The rodents that ate the same food, the same calories within that time restricted frame gained no fat and actually lost body fat. So when you eat does make a difference. Now, the thing is, now this might sound kind of paradoxical, but the old saw about how eating late at night will make you fat is bogus. That's nonsense. Because what makes you fat or gain weight is the 24-hour intake of calories, not what you eat before you go to sleep. In other words, it depends on, because fat, you don't get fat. In other words, if you eat a pizza, a whole cheese pizza, you're not going to be fat 2 hours later.
Might be bloated, I mean.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes actually 48 to 72 hours for fat synthesis to occur, which that means that in 48 to 72 hours, if you overeat or eat something bad, you have the power to prevent those extra calories from becoming fat. If you go engage in physical activity, lower your calories for a day or two, go on a fast, you're not going to get fat eating from that eating. And there's another thing is that if you don't do that all the time, if you go on a food binge, a strange thing happens. Your body, for some reason, I'm not sure why, stimulates an extra amount of IGF-1. So you actually gain a little bit of lean mass from it. You can actually get bigger muscles.
And it re-stimulates your metabolism if you've been dieting for a period of days, it's up there again.
I'm a strong believer in that. When I trained for contests, I got this from a trainer named Vince Garanda years ago. He advocated what he called off days, where you'd have, let's say you were on a ketogenic, a low carb diet, once or twice a week, you would just load up on carbohydrates. And, it did two things. First of all, on the low carbohydrate diet, your insulin goes down to nothing. Now, insulin is needed to help maintain muscle. And if you're dieting after a while without insulin, especially if you're not taking steroids, there's a danger where you can start to lose muscle from the dieting efforts, right? Insulin helps maintain muscle. That's what it does. People think insulin is anabolic. It's only anabolic in the presence of a huge amount of amino acids in your blood, but it's always anti-catabolic, meaning it always maintains muscle. So the principle of going off the diet was by having those carbohydrates on the off days, you kick out a lot of insulin. You're helping to maintain the muscle. So when you go back on the diet, you won't lose as much muscle. But on the low carb diet days, because you're not taking in carbs, now you're kicking out a lot of growth hormone, which will help you metabolize fat. That was the principle. But the secondary reason for going off the diet was your glycogen stores do get low on low carb diets. Glycogen is the key fuel for anaerobic exercise, including bodybuilding and weight training. By having carbohydrates 1 or 2 days a week, you're replenishing your glycogen stores, at least to a certain extent. It's going to help your workouts tremendously. That's going to help you because you can train harder, you'll be able to maintain more muscle on the diet. And they've shown in recent studies, I did this 50 years ago, but now new studies have come out and have shown that this really works. In other words, if you're on any kind of strict diet and you go off once a week or something like that, you will actually maintain more lean mass than if you stay on the diet 7 days a week.